Blog Talk Radio.
Well, hello out there again in Blog Talk Radio land. This is Open Money, and I'm Ernie Jacob with Alan Rosenblith in Portland and Michael Linton in the Comox Valley. And our last show, what's been happening is I've been transcribing the last show, which was really good, but really complex, and the three of us understood, and Les Moore too, in London, could understand what we were talking about, but I doubt that anybody else could. So I thought that maybe Michael, you could start off by covering some of that territory in in simpler terms or more direct terms. And then, Alan, maybe we could talk about your meeting last night and what's happening with you and your people in Portland.
Sounds good.
So, Michael, to you.
Well, thanks, Ernie. I agree. It's always necessary to repeat the structure and the frame of what we're playing with. And so I'm going to run quickly through from the basis of open money itself to the CC network and namespace, to what that has to do with the localized and regional development models, how we tie that to a project that we've called Community Way, which links corporate social responsibility efforts towards the implementation of community currencies and demonstration of how effective they can be, and also provides the initial development funding that mobilizes active, engaged, effective people on the ground. I'm also going to link that to the microcredit phenomenon. The global spread of microcredit has been a very encouraging indication of the ability of people to take on new ideas and institutions to implement them. And we see a way to support the microcredit world very definitely with our micro monies. So I'll be talking a bit about that. And then it'll hand back to Alan for his news, and we'll discuss on and get back to detail. So after that agenda, here we go. If that agenda's okay. What do you think, guys? Does that work?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's good. As long as you don't go too deep.
All right. Here's the quick, dirty, shallow answer.
The elevator pitch. The elevator
pitch is on open money. What is open money? Well, open money is basically the field within which social interaction allows us to create our own economic engines, our own monetary models, when the conventional closed money has dried out on us, as it does. The old bucket analogy. We are our little bucket, and my bucket is filled by the money that comes to me from the people who spend it on me, my customers, my employers, whatever. And then my bucket empties as I pay to those who supply me with services, goods, materials, whatever. We are a bucket between a bunch of buckets pouring to us, a bunch of buckets that pour away. That's it. That's conventional money. That's the way it is. It's a bit of a problem because you've got no control. And none of us have, and it's a problem. Well, let's not even get into the discussion of that. Let's look at what could be done. Well, could be done is that instead of just having those buckets as our means of monetary supply and demand, we can also create network currencies where essentially we have a virtual bucket. My level goes up and down as I trade with you and him and her and them. So we're really more like a sort of a, if the first conventional money is a hourglass, it pours in through the center and it pours away and there's no connection between the top and the bottom, then we're more like the smoke ring around the waist of the hourglass. The money you spend to the bottom of your smoke ring spins around and comes back with customers on the upside. That's what a closed loop virtual money system is. And what open money is the field within which millions of those currency systems can be implemented to meet the needs and styles and the economic realities of the world in which we actually live. So that people can work, so that businesses can thrive, so that we can support local agriculture, so that we can become more energy reliant, self-reliant, renewables, so that we can cap the carbon, so that we can get the planet back on a process that's maybe going to work. So CC is the network that makes open money a reality. How am I doing so far?
CC is good, okay. CC being community currencies.
Which is a big wide field. But the CC namespace is the sort of the equivalent of Internet. Internet for communications, web, text, images, whatever. CCNet is the equivalent for money, virtual money. We're not that interested in the hard stuff. We let the banks and the governments do all that. But the CC network is run like an email network. You have an email address. You can network with all sorts of other people with other email addresses. Well, it's the same thing here. You'll have a money address, very much the same, MWL of cv.ca, Canada. Simple addresses like that. But with those addresses, just as with email, you can form email groups at a click of a finger or a mouse. So you'll be able to form monetary networks with other consenting participants at pretty much the click of a mouse. So you can have neighborhood networks, you can have regional networks, you can have networks of type, musicians or devotees of Jane Austen or whatever. You can form networks just as easily as we form email groups. That's the CC namespace and the CC network. So far, so good. But how do you move one of these things out into the main street? How do you get people working with this? How do you get your local supermarkets and restaurants and hardware stores and hotels and couriers and taxi services and radio stations and local governments and whatever playing with this money? Because they should, they will. They just got to be informed about it, and they've got to be informed about it in a way that encourages the participation immediately and substantially. It's a bit like you don't fly an airplane at 5 miles an hour. You've got to get up to takeoff speed. And if these currencies are going to be real in your town, then somehow or other you've got to get a bunch of people interested and a bunch of businesses involved. Because, frankly, if you don't have business involved, you don't have anything. It's only when I can take my local currency card and spend it in the pub or the cafe or the restaurant or the theater or the hardware store or the wherever. When my card gets me a percentage of any transaction, 20% here, 50% maybe in the restaurant, maybe the theater, 100% if it's a slow night, who knows? So if I can use the money that way, it's real. So the task is how to develop that form of money in your own community. Don't you think that's a good idea?
Absolutely.
I'm glad you agree. So, what's our model? Our model is the Community Way model, which you can find on openmoney.org/CW. You can also find it on Wildfire, which you will see at the top of that same page. You can also look for it on GM no, forget that one. You can see, you'll find it. If you want open money and community way, it's available.
The other sort.
Yeah. Now the core of community way is businesses creating community currency in the act of donating it to local good works and charities, and non-local ones, as I shall describe in a minute. Give you that picture again. Just as a business might gift a gift certificate to the Rotary Club, so the Rotary Club could auction it to somebody in their network who would then show up at the business with the gift certificate. It's that same cycle, but widened out into a full representation of community currencies. You get a bunch of businesses donating substantial amounts of community currency We recommend about 1,000 community dollars per employee in the business. Some variations on that, but that's the scale. They should donate that money, community currency, to whichever local or global charity they think deserves support. Then the general public can buy that money, or as we say, change money for the better. That is, that they put hard cash to the project and receive an exactly the same number of community way dollars back, one for their exchange. And those dollars they can spend in the businesses. There's a three-way cycle which benefits all the parties without involving them in huge, complicated discussions about the reasons for money or the reasons for circulation. They just present the evidence. Here's a trial. Try it out. How can you lose? Isn't that interesting? That's community way. Anything to add to that, gentlemen?
Yes, there's a slideshow on the openmoney.org site, and I've just put it up on the chat, and it'll be in the transcription and etc. And it's openmoney.org/cw/slideshow.htm. And that's
slideshow.
Slideshow. Better. Yes, that's a lot of sibilance. Anyway,
yes, I should do my Sean Connery imitation. Maybe it shouldn't. Maybe it shouldn't.
No, anyway, so Community Way is a fundraising project that launches community currencies and open money systems and pays for itself. It's a self-financing development project.
Yeah, that's another key to its immediate relevance. Why does this one matter? Well, you can look at it in terms of the functions of it, of that businesses are demonstrating corporate social responsibility in a manner that creates a customer demand for their products and services. That's a very valuable thing in itself. Getting the community in a loop and a circle where there's a degree of accountability and responsibility much more accurately reflected. So there's good stuff from Community Way. But it also, at least in its early stages, is a legitimate vehicle for the development group to use it as a training work for corporate social responsibility. And by inducing the founding members of a Community Way, not just to donate to the good works of the community at 1,000 per employee, but also to pay a registration and training fee to the development group of 100 community dollars per employee. Now this is quite a substantial income in a virtual money, and it's the advantage that we demonstrate for this model of community currencies that many new business models can be started that are fundamentally reliant upon the community currency aspect, not on any special bells, gizmos, or new technologies or whatever. It's just this is what community currency can do. It can create these networks, and it can side fund itself from those networks for some time just to kick the game off. So that's just the primary issue for development level is this is an expression of the self-generative capacity. It's the project eating its own tortillas, eating at its own kitchen. We're actually now using the technology that we are developing to bootstrap our own systems into operation, and that's good practice. It's good ethics.
And Alan, Alan, you've been, Michael. Sorry, I mean, I think you've covered the territory quite well. Except we haven't talked about the connection between Community Way and microcredit, which is what we focused on in the last show. But I just wanted to bring Alan in here because Alan has been talking to people in Portland about these ideas. And you had a meeting last night, right, Alan?
Yeah. Well, basically last night I went to a community meeting, which is was run by a group called the Real Wealth of Portland. And they put on these kind of monthly community meetings in the name of promoting more caring economics. And so, I'm part of that group as well and do what I can. So I went there and presented this community waste strategy to a group of about 10 total newbies, people who, it was a fairly big group, but it's run sort of open space format. People can go to whatever, is interesting. So 10 of them came to my particular presentation, and these 10 people really didn't have any prior experience or knowledge around community currencies or anything of the like. So I did a little presentation. I had a pen and a piece of paper up there, and I think in the course of about 10 or 15 minutes, really won over quite a few of them, and collected a group, probably about 6 or 7 names of people who wanted to kind of join the campaign. And when I explained to them that this was not going to be unpaid work, it was going to be actual, a real paid and serious vocation, that really makes a big difference for people as far as how much time and energy they can devote to something. But I think what I really, again, and I'll say this, I think the real beauty of this program is that it's, comparatively speaking, very simple to understand and explain. I think probably all of us currently on the line have, and probably many people listening as well, have run into that problem of, explaining the money problem and explaining all these sort of complex flows of where money is created and how it goes here and how it goes there. And I think those are important discussions to have, but ultimately they get a little bit hung up on themselves. And I think they've demonstrated thus far fairly ineffectual translation into action. And I think that's what where I'm really getting excited about Community Way is, as I believe, Michael, as you put it, the kind of the match that kind of ignites the enthusiasm. And I think it's great because there's no discussion about the banking industry or about the current economic situation. It's just very simple. It's a win-win-win. And so I think that's what's really getting people's attention here. And so, yeah, I would say that's...
Hey, that's great, Alan. It's like, and I think one of the analogies with this, this match is that, we've lit matches all over the bloody world with this, right? It's like here in our hometown and in Tofino and Vancouver and London and Manchester, all over the bloody world, right? And we start a little fire and then it sort of smolders along and then, eventually just sort of dies off. And we've always thought of it in terms of what we need is some really, really dry tinder, i.e., people who are ready and just ready for getting this fire going. And that's what it sounds like to me that you've got going in Portland, and that's very exciting for me anyway.
Yeah, and I think, in terms of it's a lot of times it's sort of you can bring a horse to water, but can you make them drink sort of thing. And I think with this, it's much less of a sort of frontal assault and more of a easing into the idea that currency doesn't just have to be the dollar. Because it's really kind of sneaking it in through the back door is almost like a gift certificate. So it's a much more people have a lot less internal resistance to the idea of a gift certificate, I think, than to, wait a second, new money? What are we talking about here? No, it's just a multi-purpose gift certificate, and, it can expand, and then, so it takes people one step at a time, and you leave the breadcrumbs, and I think that's a conversation worth having as well, is how do we leave the breadcrumbs in this development phase so that Community Way truly does become the entry point into a regional mutual credit clearing system.
Yes, I think that's a very important point, is that we need to, moving a meme or a viral contagion has to be easily transmitted from place to place, from space to space, and people have got to feel comfortable with it. So taglines, things like, this is the gift certificate that keeps giving. It's a money, once it's started, it just keeps moving around. These are ideas that can take somebody's initial comfortable perception. It's a gift certificate. We change it. We spend it. And it keeps going. It's the perpetual Mexican wave for your community. You know, like, whee, and it goes round and round and round. All these images are quite easily transmitted and comfortably assimilated because they're accurate. You know, if you're telling somebody what something is in such a way that they can see it and do it, they got it. And that's the beauty of the whole community way concept is, as you say, it gets past the head tripping. It's just down to, I see, we do this, we do that, this happens, let's try it.
Yeah.
And it's not just win-win-win, it's win-win-win-win.
Yeah, no, exactly.
The middle ground is winning too, which is absolutely imperative to our process. You know, I think it's good opportunity, if I may just bounce your point there, Alan, about the breadcrumbs and the transmission. This is why I think the microcredit aspect is an important thing to consider. Community Way is generally described as supporting a charity or a community project, but equally it could be supporting a small business or a venture that was looking to start itself off. And the ideal one to look at there is microcredit. Almost all of our communities have a need for urban renewal, work on the homeless issues, all sorts of things need financing. And the microcredit model that's been so well pioneered in the third world is a perfect repository for the fundraising capacities of Community Way model. In normal microcredit, it's a bit of a hassle to raise the lenders so that you've got money to borrow. Did I get that right? Raise the lenders so you've got money to lend. Anyway, depositors have to be induced to make the funds exist. And that's always a bit of a cost and a risk and all sorts of things. Well, we could use Community Way to create microcredit funds that are in the Commonwealth, that are not owned by individual depositors and thus subject to the fluctuations of markets, and are not subject to the interest costs of that process, and can therefore amplify what microcredit is already doing so well by adding more gears to their system. And the other part of that is that microcredit in our Western world, in our inner cities, in our deprived rural areas, wherever, microcredit is not just for those worlds, but microcredit, of course, is available in the third world as a first world initiative. That is how we implement Community Way at regional and national levels can invite the ethic that looking after ourselves also means looking after others, and that it's time for the first world to inject capital into the third world in a realistic way rather than just lend it to them to suck it back again. So anything we can do to provide hard currency asset bases in the third world for their economic growth and renewal, well, it's a moral task. We've got to take it on, and Community Way allows us to do this, and we're very excited about the possibility of getting an originating network of Community Way projects. Portland, Seattle Regional, Vancouver, across the country. Chicago, obviously, is a center point that we've got interest in. We have people in London looking at this. Les Moore is a long-standing advocate of Community Way, and with the imminent Olympics in London in 4 years, it's time to get the ball rolling in that world. And then the French, with their interests, for instance, in West Africa. All these communities can be linked through their joint, mutual, and independent support of microcredit funding in the third world by the implementation of community currencies in the first. Just gearing.
I really want to actually add on to that. There's a kind of mentality, I think, that goes on with a lot of the current sort of models of aid that goes to the developing world. It's kind of us or them. We have the money, and then we could give it to them, and then we don't have it. Sort of mentality. And I think what's really powerful about this particular development model, if this gets taken up in a serious and major way, is at the same time that we're providing an asset base to the developing world that's going to be, sort of no strings attached, Commonwealth asset base to the developing world, we will also be developing our regional economies simultaneously. It's the same action in both places. One action has two positive results. So, I think that's, it gets us out of that kind of, why should I worry about them when I have to worry about making the mortgage payment on my house? Why should I worry about them when I have to worry about putting my kids through school or whatever it is? It's a win-win. We're developing the regional economy, and we're helping to build an asset base for the developing world.
Well, it's winning. It's winning all the way around. On every level, the community and the people and the businesses in those communities do well by having their own community currencies, and that's what the open money platform enables. And at this point, I just want to say that we've got 35 minutes left to this show. And we should point out that there's a call-in number. If anybody wants to call in and ask a question or join in the conversation, the number is 646-716-9424. And there's a chat open on Blog Talk Radio, and this is podcast on Blog Talk, of course. And we're talking about open money, community currencies, community way, LET systems, and Cascadia Regional Community Economic Development. And
anything else to do with money.
Yes.
So long as it's
Michael,
virtual.
you wanted to talk a little bit more about eating our own tortillas or something. You wanted to get a little deeper into that?
Well, I think that's where the nuts and bolts of the conversation with you, Alan, have to be a fairly high priority. Is how do you get this show on the road? So where have you got to so far, for instance? Let's work out from where you are, and we'll start talking about how it ties in.
Well, I think we're basically looking at finding a group of interested and willing participants in this process, so, the sales staff. And I think we've got between 10 and 20 of those up and ready to kind of kick it off. And we're also looking, dialoguing with the nonprofit community, sort of there's a technical assistance for community services here in Portland, which we are dialoguing with, and hoping to present this to them as a fundraising model. So once, and I have a feeling they're going to go for it, because this is, I've definitely seen a lot of enthusiasm. Every time I present this to people, it's just really like a real click for a lot of people. So I think then the next question becomes, well, how do we actually start getting our, how do we go from that kind of potential energy to kinetic energy and people on the ground, going door to door, the software installed on nonprofits' websites so that they can do the actual changing of the credits for dollars, and what are these sort of very practical steps? And so that's one question, which goes along then with how do we pay our staff, both in the community and in federal. And then, I think the second part of that conversation is how do we gear this whole apparatus so that it's pointed up, so that this really does become the kickoff to a regional payment mutual credit clearing system, as opposed to kind of a one-trick pony, which is very nice, but how do we get those gears to keep engaging? So that's those are my two main questions at this point.
Well, let's deal with the second one first, because it's obviously the name of the game in some respects. And look at it like one of these ice cream parlors. 48 flavors offered. We've got to make it clear right from the beginning that a community way initiative or any variant of it is merely an example of what you can do with the whole ice cream parlor. Like how many flavors are there? As many as you like, and some more besides. And the very act of implementing Community Way, the software platform that we recommend for its implementation, is automatically allowing everybody who's participating access to all the other ice cream buckets. Like you can play in any of these flavors. Now, for many people, that will be a trepidation or an intimidation rather than anything else. And so it's also got to be clear to them they're not forced into anything at all. It's just, here you are, here's a new whole field of activity, and it's all available to you from the beginning. Now, how different flavors, in addition to the Community Way, are advocated, promoted, supported, stimulated, that's a matter of local color, local choice, local initiative. It's what do you want? What matters to you? Is it food security? Is it homelessness? Is it fixing up that dead river or whatever? Every community will take its own directions, its own implementations, but right from the beginning, they've got to be shown it's the whole candy store. It's not just one flavor and that's it.
I want to point out, too, that the software that we're talking about is open source freeware. Right? So we're talking about open money.
Yeah. Yeah, this isn't a toll booth. You're not being invited into the circus. You'll pay to get in and you'll pay to get out. On the contrary, it's all open space, and you make of it what you make of it. We're just showing you what's possible. And maybe that takes us back to your other lead question there on how and why and where and what, the bits and pieces.
How do you go from potential to on the ground? We're getting paid, we're making it happen.
When you convert the potential into the actual energy, you load up the system. It's like winding up the clockwork mouse and then throwing the switch, You're in the wind-up phase at this point. Wind up your mousies. Now, in the general graphic of Community Way as we usually use it, there's a left-hand top sector for the business organizations, who are the creators of the money, and then there's a right-hand top sector for the beneficiaries, a general field of charities, community groups, microcredit funds, local, whatever, global. And then there's the people in the base. The ground of everything is the general public, the us world, the individuals. So the organizations on the top and the people on the baseline. And in the very center, the fourth factor, the development organization, the people who are going to do it, the willing workers, the people who will do it for a community. Now, you say that you're getting started on what I describe as the top right and the center. Right?
Yeah, well, and a little bit from the business community as well. We're doing that. And there's actually been quite a bit of enthusiasm from I'd say about 10 or so business providers that we've discussed so far. And so, I think there's enthusiasm all the way around. It's getting all the ducks in the right order.
Yeah. Well, this is a question of knowing when to push and when to pull, I think. There's an awful lot of our attitudes towards sales, marketing, induction, which are about pushing things into the space, which is often necessary, but frankly, if they can be pulled by the need, by the interest, by the energy of, yeah, let's do it, then that's so much more effective. And that's where we're recommending you go for the community support first. You make sure that there are people in the charitable sector, in the project sector, in the local government sector, in the economic development sector, in the infrastructure and the support of the community who see the big picture in this and say, damn right, we need this in our community, we can use this. So you go up into that sector and get your mentors, your authenticators, your validators, your front people, the people who say, yes, our community needs this, not just because Alan says so. You know, that's great that you say so, Alan, but hey, you know, it's far better if somebody with an institutional basis is willing to say, we're behind this, we're involved in it, we want to benefit from it, we want to see it happen. And the thing that makes that possible is basically the people in the middle who are saying, and we're willing to do this if we can get some support, and then if the money's coming to us as the registration fees, community money income, then that's an easy income. It's sort of cherry picking in so many ways. It's not difficult to get businesses to pay for their information and education in this space. So if you've got willing workers who are saying that they're willing to do it and play the game, i.e. accept community money to a large extent, also convert their community income to hard cash, if they're going to play the game, then that's a huge pull into the process. So if you're setting up the top right in the middle, I think you'll find the business community very interested in being supportive, and you'll find the general public equally willing to just go with what is a well-presented flow.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like one of the major kind of outreach points to the general public is going to be through the networks associated with the charitable organizations. So, you
Absolutely.
know, that I think takes it kind of out of the onus of, come on, people, you got to do this.
No,
please, not that.
It's in the interest of the recipient community organization. I mean, the organizations and projects that receive these Community Way dollar gifts from local businesses, it behooves them to turn that into cash, turn that into productive activity by paying their volunteers with it, and the money is good if the people who get it can spend it at, I don't know, say 100 or 1,000 businesses in Portland.
Yeah. Well, hopefully more than that someday soon.
Well, eventually,
yeah.
But you know, but you can start if you start off, even if you start off with 20 or 50 mainstream businesses, could make this happen easily.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a big deal, right? The starting one of these things is dead easy. It's building on it that requires the support of everybody in the network. Everybody in the network has got to see, well, this is really good stuff. Let's keep it moving. What can we do to move it even faster and farther?
Well, I think one of the things I like about this is, you know, it's a very easy way to bring businesses on board. And then when you talk about taking it to that next level of the, you know, let's keep this stuff moving sort of thing. Let's, you know, you get back to zero. Well, you can go into the negative then do credit clearing with other businesses, provide bonuses for your employees, provide preventative health care for your employees. All that sort of thing becomes, I think, exponentially easier because there's already the network in place. I mean, by the time people are thinking like that, well, there's already a couple hundred businesses on board. There's already 1,000 businesses on board. So it's not, you know, by the time you get to the point where people are thinking along those lines, the network is already there. You don't have to do that kind of, you know, snowball mentality of.
Well, that's what Michael was referring to when he was talking about the pull rather than the push.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's in everybody's
and the no risk
interest.
pool. It's the shallow end of the pool as well, as a matter of fact, if you want to mix a few metaphors in there. I mean, because you're saying to the business, look, we're asking you to part with something that you can consider a discount coupon, if you like. You can just think of this like, I've issued discount coupons and I'm going to have to redeem them. But somehow or other, that's helping out the charities that I've targeted. Not bad deal in itself. So a business can come in, run through it like that, get back to zero, having, maybe issued 5,000 and received 5,000 in these coupons, as we might call them. And they've done well. There's no hard feelings if they want to pull out. But at this stage, they may have noticed the customer support they're getting, the increased turnover, the vitality of the situation, and the fact that it's a better marketing package than they've ever seen in their lives before. So obviously the option to keep spending the money out should be clear and available to them. You can do this. And we suspect that a business that finds it a successful customer generator is going to be very happy to just jump in and move it on and move it on. In fact, the thing we're looking for are that some of the foundation members don't even wait to get back to zero. Their attitude is, I'm at minus 5,000 now, and if I come above minus 4,000, I'm spending it. I keep moving it out, move it around, so that they never come back to zero. They remain as the underwriters of this community currency, the supporters, the promoters of it, just simply by their actions. We get it. We spend it.
When I was talking to local businesses here in the Comox Valley, and I talked to them about going negative 2,000 or 5,000. These are small businesses going negative 2,000 or 5,000 in the Community Way dollar. Most of them had absolutely no difficulty understanding that they can stay at that negative position forever, and just keep the money flowing through. They understood that. Our problem here in the valley was that they didn't get the flow. They didn't see it coming back because it got stuck with community organizations, and that's why that's my point about the self-interest of the community organizations. Ought to move the money that has been given to them.
Yeah.
Well, and here's money.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, here's money if you validate it, if you give validity to this money. You're a nonprofit. You've just received this $5,000. You never knew it was coming. Here it is. Okay, it's community money. Well, you might be able to use it directly. That's great too, isn't it? But on the other hand, you can put it up for change. Change your money here. These dollars make sense, all that sort of stuff. Move the stuff out, and bang, you're in hard cash.
Well, and I think one of the things here, and this is probably worth discussing as well, is getting nonprofits kind of out of the begging space. Because I think a lot of times, and this is also in large part due to the way our economic circumstances operate. But I think a lot of times nonprofits do kind of get into a mentality of, begging for money. And I think this is what's different about this is that it's an empowered stance. So, I wonder, is that worth talking about, just sort of figuring out some of the...
The other part of that equation is not just begging for money, but competing for money.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a very debilitating process in our communities, because everybody is going after not only a small pot, but a diminishing pot of public monies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what this provides is a completely different kind of funding process, which is collaborative by its very nature.
Yeah. Do you have some theories about, or ideas about just sort of what are the memes that we can begin to implant in the nonprofit community that can begin to work past some of those barriers, some of that competition, scarcity mentality that exists within that world? What are some of the memes that we can implant?
Well, I think it's basically we're offering them an empowerment process that they can take on by their own presentation. I think the way a nonprofit presents itself in the community is often on the "we're doing good work and we need your support," But often it's more the begging side of the deal rather than sort of standing proud and clear. This is our function, this is our mission, this is what we've achieved. Now, consider a website or a community information network or other that allows the nonprofits to make an upfront case for what they're doing, for how they're serving the community, with the expectation that they're not so much competing in a market as they're collaborating in the emergence of the funding resources that will support them. Just turn them over a little bit, out of the begging and into the pride in product, if you like. We do this. Will you support us? And see what comes of it.
Mm. Well, and it's also, I think one of the key things that the key, I guess, attitudes or sort of subtext in the nonprofit funding world is also the idea that getting people to sacrifice, getting individuals to part with some of their hard-earned money, but the basically the product that they're selling is feeling good about that. One way or another. And I don't mean to sound cynical about this because I have a lot of respect for the nonprofit world. But I think this goes into a slightly different game where you're not really asking people to part with anything so much as change. So I think it requires a slightly different pitch on their part, a slightly different.
Well, this is all experiential. This needs to be an experience, and that's the key thing here is action, is doing it. Because
change your money, change your world. It's not about theorizing, and it's not about guilt.
Using that money is good. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. It works for it's good for everybody. So why wouldn't you?
Yeah. Well, this is great stuff. I don't mean to get overly theoretical there. I was just kind of pondering that, I suppose.
You were talking about how do we what are the memes that we need here? What are the memes that we can use? I think that as people like yourself, like your exploration of these ideas, right, and the people now that you're talking to in Portland, I think it's in that exploration and that understanding that the motivation comes to do it, and it's in the doing.
Yeah,
that's what's very important here because, that takes me back to another point that I wanted to mention is to record the process of the doing because there are others that want to. In fact, you had a phone call from a guy that was interested in doing it. Where in Wisconsin, Alan?
Yeah. There was some rumblings I heard, so don't know if.
So anyway,
really...
so there are people who are interested, and it would be what would be very good is a model for people to replicate in their own communities.
Yeah.
So that makes it simpler and simpler and simpler for other people to pick up these ideas and do them themselves. And you guys are leading the way.
Yeah.
And it's the curious thing here is that the most powerful pull is at the very center of the process. It's the people who say, yeah, I see how this can work and I'm going to do it, and basically commit themselves to project where their income is dependent upon their success. They enroll businesses in this project, and businesses make donations, and businesses make contributions to the core funding. And we're talking about $100 per employee in the donor groups. Now, How many $100 do you need to support one core worker in one of these initiatives? In, say, Portland, somebody might be able to get into this and give it their best if they were making, say, $2,000 to $2,500 a month. Mm-hmm. That's right. Now, at $100 income per employee, that means your bare minimum, and I know this, I'm not counting any overheads here, but if you had a business come in that has 25 employees, then that single event meets the sort of the wage costs of one worker for a month.
Yeah.
So that's your sort of scale of action to look at. Is now add a bit more, take it to 50, so that you've got cover for your overhead, you've got cover for the printing you're going to have to do, you've got cover for whatever's, right? So let's be realistic and say per employee or per active, and they're not employees because this isn't an ownership deal, but per contributing, participating developer at drawing maybe $2,000 to $2,500 a month to keep bread on the table and their lives working, about 5,000 income would be good. And 5,000 income comes from 50 employees in the intake during that month. So if you had to have 10 people or 10 full-time equivalents in your core group, which is a good number, you'd be looking at bringing in enough businesses every month that there's about 500 employees in that intake. Mm-hmm. Now, gee, that could be 2 businesses.
Yeah.
And in fact, that's the point I want to make about the global and the microcredit and the point of involving some of the big international, multinational corporations in this process. That if a big business, and by big I mean more than 1,000 employees, or even that level, but let's say that's a margin point, 1,000 employees, a business joins into this game, and they are actually creating $100,000 of development funding for those who are working in these projects.
Yeah.
Microcredit funding.
Well, no, they're creating $1 million in microcredit funding. Suppose they created it for microcredit alone, and that's not necessary. They might be doing it for all sorts of different projects. But their total contribution at $1,000 per employee, community money, is $1 million in community money. That's their donation scale. That's great. That's pumping that into the economies of their local world and their worldwide world. But it's also creating a revenue to the development world, development of open money, of 100,000 community dollars. So you can see how quickly we can bring this project to a serious level of financial energization. And that is why your work in Portland is imperative, Alan, because by creating the context and the reality for this to happen in Portland, you amplify the possibilities and the urgencies in many different communities around the planet.
Yeah,
and just as soon as we find some corporations who are willing to say, this looks sensible, I want to play, then we are actually in business.
And of course, we have some pretty major corporations here in Portland. Nike, Adidas, Intel. There's some pretty big players here that might be pretty interested. So, and
yes,
Nike,
indeed.
Nike has really been building its name like this to, engaging in corporate social responsibility recently. So,
well, everybody's got to pay attention because the chips are coming in. A corporation is either responsible or it's not. And it's becoming very clear that a hell of a lot of them are utterly irresponsible. So this raises the bar and opens an opportunity, opens the door for many businesses, many corporations with real intent and ethics to match, to make a difference in the world and in their business model. Now, how bad can that be? So what we're looking for are the early adopters, the innovators, those who are quick on the uptake. We don't want to spend months trying to sell this idea to some reluctant participant. We want to just put it out there, name the game, and excite the response to draw in the people who are going to make this thing work. And, well, my target is some multinational or not even multinational. It can be any organization with about 1,000 employees that's willing to pitch in and say that they're up for this. They're basically going to be the ones who have their name on the headboard.
Yep. Yeah.
Anyway, so that's my pitch for the day. 4 minutes remaining. Alan.
4 minutes remaining, and I think one of the things that we tend not to bring into these discussions is that there is an urgency to these matters. I mean, it really does matter that we get open money, community currencies out there and operating as soon as possible. Because with all the shit that's coming down here for everybody in this world, we really need to get together and start solving some of these problems. Yeah. You know? I mean, we really have to do it now.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that really, you know, the key here is rethinking exchange dynamics. And, you know, if you really get down to the core of everything that's going wrong, it basically comes down to how do we exchange stuff and what are the terms behind which we exchange it. And so, you know, I couldn't agree with you more that there's a real urgency to kind of rethink what exchange is all about. And
yeah, I'm gonna pick that one up, Alan, because rethinking exchange dynamics, that's red. That's the code red. Okay, we got to rethink exchange dynamics.
Code red, huh?
Code red.
Flashing red light on the dashboard of civilization.
Yeah, well, that's right. You got that right.
Yeah. Time to wake up, gentlemen.
But rather than rethinking, it's the redoing. We got to redo. We got to
exactly.
We got to redo. We just got to get at it and
that's so important because exchange is a kinetic process. It's a doing, yes. And it is not a thinking. It's a doing. It's a kinetic energy exchange. So that's I think that's where
exactly. Okay, so what are we going to talk about next? What are we going to talk about next, and when are we going to do it? We've got 3 minutes left.
Now, I'm off to Chicago on a conference called Freedom to Connect, a very powerful conference in Washington on the 31st and 1st of April. So I'm going to be a bit out of the loop for the next week or so.
What about Thursday?
Maybe I'll be able...
Thursday morning?
Not ideal for me. Too many things to do.
Okay. All right.
But
okay, well,
frankly, maybe next week there'll be plenty to pick up on out of this discussion, and maybe bring in some of these other people who'd be interested. Transcription would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I've started that process, and it is slow, but actually, there you go. We could talk about money and for the last 2 minutes, money and Blog Talk Radio and this show, Michael.
What about, the Blog Talk Radio? No, far too complicated.
Oh,
not in 2 minutes, I can't explain that.
Okay, well, then we'll have to talk about it on Thursday before you go.
Okay, I'll give it a bit of time on Thursday.
All right. Or we'll talk about it offline and figure out a good time, right, Alan?
Sure enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, any last words from you guys? There's 2 minutes remaining.
Take it away, Alan.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just want to, reiterate, a point that this is about doing, and there's kind of, you've had the sort of the three major worlds. There's the academic sort of civil society world, and the nonprofit world, and the for-profit world. And the more I interact with all this stuff, currency and thinking about currency design and all that really involves elements from all three, because, we are talking about goodwill and creating a benefit for our fellow human beings. we are talking about a serious kind of understanding and systemic understanding of exchange systems, sort of on the academic side. And we are also talking about making something work for the bottom line. So that's kind of the business side of it. And we have to, I think, as we all work towards these things, we have to kind of keep all three of those attitudes simultaneously in ourselves, because I think they all have a very important things to offer in terms of how do we interact with the world. And it's just really important, I think, that we just sort of honor all three approaches as we facilitate exchange and discussion in society around these issues.
Wow, that's a great extra.
I like it. I like it.
I like
that
it
one in
too.
print.
Maybe I'll start from the ass end on this show. Anyway, that was great, guys.
Yeah, real good.
We'll maybe talk again on Thursday, huh?
Will do.
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right.
Take care, Alan Rosenblith in Portland and Michael Linton in the Comox Valley. And I'm Ernie Jacob. And if you have been listening, this has been Open Money on Blog Talk Radio. That's about it for me, I guess. Anything else? Well, you can follow along on, where can they follow along? At Ning, on the Ning site. Well, anyway, Google Open Money. Show is not streaming. What a dumb way to lead this fucking show.
But it is recording.
It isn't, is it?
It's recording, but not streaming.
Ah, well, whatever. Jesus. That was a good show, though. Are you guys still there?
I am, but I think we should now cut and
go on Skype or something.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. Good.
Good night.
Good to see you.
Happy world.
See ya.